second row, almost because they haven't earned the right to get the loose forward shirt yet.
Yeah.
They've got to prove themselves before they get that coveted loose forward jersey.
Yeah.
So I think Mike Gregory's probably, similar to that. You start out in the second row, you've probably played youth rugby at loose forward, and you're probably going to end up at loose forward, but you got to earn your stripes first.
Yep.
And as you said that, my computer's just timed out and I've lost my list because it was typed out on my computer. There's another two that sprung out to me, Australians, from the early days when I was watching in the 80s. Gary Neilbling, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and Paul Sirenen. Now, do you remember Paul Sirenen?
I don't remember him because he played most of his stuff when I was like 3 or something, but he definitely was a player that's on my list as like up there as the best. He's sort of regarded in Australia, isn't he, as the best ever second rower sort of thing.
Such a big guy, he was huge, and I remember watching. They came over here on a tour in the might have been '86, and I remember watching a few of the tour games and went watching at Widnes, and I stood near the tunnel at the old ground at Widnes as I'd be about 11 or 12, something like that. I remember hearing about these guys because you didn't get as much TV, you didn't have social media, so you'd heard about these guys, but you hadn't really seen them. And I remember stood by the tunnel and I watched him run out, and he looked 10 foot tall and 30 stone of pure muscle. And I just thought, how can anyone tackle this guy? He's just so big. I was just in awe of him. But those two second rowers played most of the games, if I recall, the international games in that tour. But back to my other list, there's another one I'll throw at you, Michael Jackson. Do you remember that name?
I mean, I remember the name, but I don't remember the rugby league player.
It was a fast second row. I remember going and watching Saints at Wakefield in the early 90s, and he scored 2 great tries to beat Saints. And I could have swore he signed for Leeds shortly after that. Some listeners may remember him a bit better. He played international, but I looked him up on Wikipedia and it didn't come up as Leeds. So whether I remember wrong or Wikipedia is not updated, I'd be interested to find out from some Wakefield fans or Leeds fans where he actually played a lot of his later rugby.
Sheffield in '98, so I don't want to talk any more about it.
I've got George Mann, another really good second row at Saints, a very strong ball-playing second rower. Phil Clark, I used to love watching Phil Clark play. I know that people aren't too sure of him now as a pundit. He's quite opinionated. I find him quite entertaining, actually.
He certainly winds people up or gives people a laugh with his clothes one way or the other. He gets talked about.
Yeah, well, he generates talking points, if nothing else, doesn't he? But you know what? He was a great player. And again, he's another one who really ended up at loose forward. So, whether you consider him a loose forward or second row, I'm not sure, but great player. Another one who was an Australian who came to Saints, Derek McVeigh, in the early days of Super League, if I remember rightly. Do you remember Derek McVeigh? Really entertaining. Ball
I know
handling.
the name of him.
Worth looking up. Really entertaining to watch. Good ball playing second row forward, like to pass the ball. Another one who had a great career at several clubs, Lee Gilmore.
Yeah, he was on a sort of honourable mention list that I had as well. Lee Gilmore, I'm fairly sure he must have won Super League titles for Wigan, Bradford, and St Helens, which is impressive, isn't it, in itself? And he's tipped as a up and coming coach as well at the moment at Wakefield, but there's talk about other clubs wanting him to get onto him to be on their staff. So yeah, Lee Gilmore was a talent. Yeah,
very talented. Quick, wasn't he? Was fast. A good engine on him. Really good engine.
Didn't he move from being in the centre?
I think he did. Yeah.
He definitely played games in the centre, and I think that was, this is that thing about players will start somewhere and move on. I think he was quick enough to play in the outside backs, but he was always destined to play the majority of his career in the second row, I think. But yeah, definitely a fantastic player, yeah.
Then I've got another list, second rowers with a question mark, which is a bit tongue-in-cheek, really, because these are players who played in the second row at some stage, but weren't really second rowers, probably. Paul Sculthorpe, Andy Farrell, Stuart Fielding, Adrian Morley, Jamie Peacock, Andy Platt. Remember Andy Platt? Saints to Wigan. All his rugby when he was younger at Saints was in the second row. Sam Burgess and a couple here. Carl Furbank, really good prop forward. Les Holiday.
Did Fairbank ever play in the... just some of these...
Played in the back row, yeah.
Prop, yeah.
The prop forward's an exceptional, really tough prop forward, but yeah, he has played in the second row. Les Holiday had David Furley, who went to Saints, who was an exceptional prop forward and probably my favourite prop forward in Super League at the moment, David Furley. I might push to think of other props.
I think that's the thing. There's so many players who we're probably going to talk about on other episodes that because we've got centres to come, so you've got some that would be centres who played a little bit of second row, and we've got props to come and loose forwards to come. So you're right that there's so many names. I mean, John Wilkins, another name that to me he mostly played in the second row, but probably now he's thought of as a ball player and a loose forward, and he obviously played spells in the halves, but he'd be on that list of kind of sort of moving over to the other. And I think Andy Hayes, another guy that was on my sort of list, I thought did he play loose forward or did he play second row? But I always thought he was a very talented rugby league player who ran good lines, certainly. And do you know another one that's in that question mark list? Tony Puletua. Was he a prop or was he a second rower? I always remember him doing most of his damage, and he did a fucking annoying amount of damage against Wigan when he played at Saints, as a sort of wide runner. But I can't remember where he was named, but I knew he wore 11 a lot of the time, but sometimes wore 8 as well in his career. So I can't exactly remember him, but he's on my list of that sort of list that you're talking about, David.
Yeah, I think, Sonny Puletua was a great player, wasn't he? I remember him as being a second rower.
Yeah.
But the last one on that list is James Graham, who also played in the second row in his very early days.
You're reaching there. I thought Andy Platt was a reach, but that's a big reach.
James Graham is a reach, you're right, but he had, that's what I mean. It's just pointing out, I suppose, that a lot of these players who went on to play other positions and do really well had started out as often a young kid in the back row. And I'm not sure that would happen as much now, where they transfer at an early age, maybe later in the career, but maybe not so early.
You've got like Danny Tickle, Jamie Jones Buchanan, Ben Westwood, we were talking about, that ended up playing games as bench middles, but actually even Brian Fletcher, who was a great second rower in Australia and then came over and played for Wigan and ended up playing half a season at prop for Wigan. They did that right at the end of their careers, didn't they, I suppose? So, yeah, there is loads of that. Gareth Hock was another. His last year in Super League with Lee was at prop, but his first career, his first start of his career was a wiry but violent, but also great offloading back rower. One of the guys before mentioned Hock, didn't they? Sarah, who's on your list then? Who've we not mentioned, but also who've we mentioned that you want to talk more about as well, I suppose?
So I must admit mine is black and white biased.
Totally fine.
So I've got Russ Walker. Do you know Russ Walker? Possibly before your time. He actually became he was player coach for Hull in 95, I think.
Definitely before my time.
He was a second row forward. He used to travel over from Cumbria, I think, for training.
He now
really
works
good
in the petrochemical industry in Barrow in Furness.
But he's still a massive Hull fan and travels over for all the matches, posts on like social media and stuff. So he's really, he didn't come from Hull, but he really bought into like the club and everything else, and is a massive fan still. His son is called Brad, I think, who plays for the Hull Academy at the moment, Brad Walker.
Right.
But Russ was a very, very talented second row forward ball player. First autograph I ever got, I think.
Well, that's more than deserving of a mention on the show then, isn't it?
But I think he was probably one of the early sort of players that I could identify as, yes, he's a good player. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You recognise the skill in them. Of course, Lee Radford, second rower originally.
Yeah, I had him down as a player that I was thinking someone might pick up? Lee Radford. What did there was an old game, wasn't there, on TV a few weeks ago that Lee Radford was in, or some clips or something, and basically Joshua kind of said that
Lee Radford. Look, it's Lee Radford. He looks like Lee Radford.
but he does. He's got that perpetual ability to look like a bloke in his mid-30s.
Well, I think as well at the time he had all of his head shaved as well, which made him look a lot older.
Yeah.
But again, I remember seeing him playing in the academy as a 16-year-old before he did the dirty honours and went to Bradford.
Of course, he had great success. He was part of that Bradford side that was really successful in the first half of the noughties, wasn't he? So
yeah.
You can't begrudge him his success. And he did come back.
He did.
And brought you some success.
Yep. So then from the sort of early 2000s, a player that has been sort of talked about quite a lot recently, Adam Mayer, great second rower. I really liked him. He was one of those that just got on and did the job. You could always rely on him to be there to make the tackles, to pick up the ball, and things like that. So he was a really good player for us.
Sadly, he lost his battle, didn't he, against motor neuron disease earlier this year. But
yeah, about a month ago or so, I think it was. It wasn't that long ago.
No, exactly. Yeah. So obviously that's a really poignant sort of player to bring up. But yeah, impressive player though still.
Yeah, and then the other one from that time was Tony Grimaldi, who was our captain. He came over with the whole Gateshead merger thing.
Did he go to play for London?
I thought he went back to Australia.
Yeah, he did play for London. For some reason, I thought he played for London, but he didn't. He played for Gateshead. Oh, Gateshead and then you, yeah.
Yeah, but he was our captain, and again, he was one of those players. You know, if a short kickoff went up, you knew that Grimaldi would be there to catch the ball. If somebody dropped the ball, you knew that Grimaldi would be there to pick it up. He was just Mr. Reliable. He was a really, really good, talented player. He was one of those loose forward / second rowers, but because Jason Smith came over, I think a year later, who was an out-and-out loose forward, that pushed Grimaldi into the second row definitely. But interest. So there was a social media thing yesterday where just chatting about his time at Hull and how much he'd enjoyed it and how he settled in so well because his wife had got involved with one of the local netball teams, so she had all the connections and everything as well. And then he said, yeah, I'd happily go back to Hull. If Andy Last wants me to come over and he can be my assistant, I'd take the coaching job.
Oh, wow.
So there we go.
There you go, yeah.
Because he's currently coaching at, is it Canterbury?
Yeah, well, Canterbury was where he had his greatest success, I think, at the end of his career. It's probably where he stayed the longest. Looking at reading this on his Wikipedia page.
Yeah, and then obviously more recently, Willie Manu.
Yes.
Who Saints and Hull and...
His first season was with Cass, weren't he? And he was just an absolute revelation. He was so powerful and so skillful. He had one of the best offloads in the competition for certain. Yeah,
and then he came to us and then he went to Saints. But again, another second rower that amazing.
I'm glad you mentioned Willie Manu. Yeah, definitely. He in that era where there was him, there was Solomona, there was Lauatiti.
I do remember Solomona now.
There were all these sort of really skillful, powerful. Yeah, they didn't shirk defensively either, but these really skillful, powerful second rowers around Super League at that time, and he was definitely in that group with those other guys. Yeah, well, great shout, Sarah. Yeah,
and then from our 2005 Challenge Cup winning team, a player that has played in multiple positions, but I've gone for him being a second rower, Chris Chester. His link-up play with Paul Cook was very, very good.
Yeah, Chris Chester was a really talented player, but Chris Chester was his period. He was Simon Grix back then. I think.
Yeah.
I think totally. Yeah. I think I'd seen him